Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Entrepreneurial Mindset. Get your company started. We saw what the lean startup cycle, the build, measure, learn cycle can do for you. Now let's give you an example in order to really understand what this is about. It's an example of two websites, two startup companies, and they both offer a service creating a curriculum vitae, a CV, a resume for you, which is necessary. If you want to apply for a job, you need a CV, and if you have someone that helps you professionally, that's value creation probably. This is how these companies started. Creating a CV, and that's the first service with a standard template, is free. There's a charge premium package, which includes unique design templates and proofreading. And creating an account and logging in is necessary to use this service. So this is a typical model. You can go on the website, browse a little bit, you can have some free services, but if you want to have the real service, you have to pay for that. Now let's look at the two companies. Company A is the first move on the market. It operates in Germany, Austria, Switzerland. That's a local example where we are from. Company B is a very local company. It's a student idea. Operates only in Aachen, which is where our university is located. So again, what's the conversion process of both companies? Well, first of all, people visit the website. Then ideally they create an account. They log in. They use the website features. They create a free CV. And ideally, they buy a premium package. And this is the business model of these companies. So it is not a business model which is built on advertising or something else. It is really built on users that at the very end buy a premium package. Now, let's look at these companies more closely, especially the numbers of these companies. We called it the vanity metrics, because some of the metrics are really, first of all, vanity metrics, or if you look at these metrics in that way, you don't see really much. Company A, and if I were the leader of Company A, I would say we're a very successful company. Our number of users is rising, so we have website visitors per week. You can see that over here, and it's more than 10,000 right now. So it looks like more and more people come, and more people also, if you look at those numbers going up, use our service. Successful company. Everyone will understand that. If you look at Company B, well, you basically tell the same story. You say, okay, we're a small company, and compare these 600 to the 10,000 over here. But still, we are on a success path, and also all the other measures are going up. Does this really help you? Well, if you try to look at something in very much detail, you might be able to understand it from these vanity metrics, but they only poorly represent the truth. What you have to do is you have to test your hypothesis. So what is your hypothesis? What do you need to know? Well, two things. People will come, which is the growth measure, and people will convert, which is bringing value to you. And that's important. So what you have to do is you have to build actionable metrics. You have to do a website visitor cohort analysis. And if you do that cohort analysis, you can basically take the same measures as before, look at that, but you base them on 100% so that you can more easily compare those two companies. So what you see is the not registered users up here. Those are not registered, about 30%. It's a little less in the other company. What you also see is registered but not logged in, and logged in but not active. So users which are there, which you still have to convert into active, more active users. Because what you need is real users, which are the free users on the one hand. This is that blue. And especially paying users. but only if you see people are really using your website, not just browsing it. Using your website, free users, then your company is doing well, and especially when people do a step further, log in and pay for this service. And this is why these actionable metrics help you a lot more in understanding those companies, because you can see two things basically. The one thing is, and this is again company A, this is company B. Company A is not doing really well compared to company B. If you look at company A, you don't see an improvement over here. So going back a slide, you don't see a difference between there and there. Meaning users come, users log in, but they're not really active. This is not what you need. You do not only need people that just browse around if you have a business model, which is CVs. You need them to convert into using your service. But this is not what's happening over here. If you look at the smaller company, it is happening because this is a bigger percentage than this over here on week 8. So that's the first message which you can see as a takeaway. Second message is who's paying? What's about the paying users? And you can barely see them here, but you can see them over here. That also improved a lot in company B. Again, going back a slide, you see it here. It remains basically 3, 4, 5%. You can say, okay, it went up from 3 to 4 to 5%, which is an improvement, might be good. But if you compare that to the other website, it went up from 3 to 24%. And that's the real improvement. And this is how you can now, if you do that cohort analysis, you can see a lot more about the success of these two companies. So what do you have to do if you want to see that? You have to define measures that are relevant for the growth model, which have to fulfill basic characteristics which are actionable. So you can clearly see the cause and the impact, which are accessible and which are auditable. So you have to have reports on that, which are these ones on the page before, and the data has to be trustworthy. And then you can look at them from week to week and see the improvement or not improvement over the weeks. So you can interpret these numbers, and then you know whether you have to pivot or persevere. So you know that this company B, at least with these low number of people, should go on working like this, because they probably have a better user experience over time, and they have more paying customers, which are two positive results. Company A probably has to think about the business model, because there's no improvement. And the question is this really the right service, or now do they have to pivot? Now, what is necessary to do that? How do you learn from the experience? Well, there's a fundamental requirement. You have to have clear and objective thinking and acting. And the only way to realize that, if you split it up into groups of people and you make regular meetings between the two groups of people. And this is first of all the product team, and secondly the company leaders, because they have different roles in that. The product team brings along the reports about the result of the product optimization efforts. So how they would improve the product, how they improve the product, and the comparison between the development of the results and the expectations. The company leaders, on the other hand, they bring detailed feedback of customers and potential customers. So they basically have the other side to that. Because if both being done by the product team, they will interpret it their way. Now you have a more objective view on that. And you sit together and you try to understand the improvements and the feedback in one meeting. So what are the signals for a pivot then? The sinking effect of the MVP experience, which we've seen before. So if I step 2 slides back, especially here, if they still do experience, you don't see a result. This is when you know you have to change something entirely, or more radically at least. And if the company leaders get the feeling that the product development should be more productive. They say, oh, it's not going to work, and the product development teams does best efforts, but it's still not changing. It's probably not about the product anymore, and the product team can't change it. Now it's necessary that you have a strategy change. And this is when you see you really need a pivot. So what's the pivot definition there? If you do a pivot, then you go this build, measure, learn cycle again and again, but with a new product. So you start with the new hypothesis, new product, then you measure, take the data, learn, and do that over and over again until you see that this new product works out and you can work yourself into the market with optimization, or you have to pivot again. That's the very end of the build, measure, learn cycle, and this is how you can really step into business very, very lean. So what's the main takeaway of the whole chapter? You start with a real minimum viable product, and even before, you start with your own hypothesis. You have a hypothesis, and you have a minimum viable product according to the hypothesis, and this is what you're willing to commit as an affordable loss, not more. Remember the $1,000 Michael Dell had. And then you go into your learning cycle, and only if you learn, you go on. If you see there's no learning efforts, there's no optimization possible, you might want to commit another $1,000 into a pivot, or you might say, it's about time to stop the business. And this is why starting lean fits perfectly to the idea of the entrepreneurial mindset, fits perfectly to Sarasvati's idea of effectuation, of stepping into the business, and fits perfectly to what Michael Dell said, give it a go and look what happens. But it's not only a go and looking what happens, it's a go with a hypothesis and a learning effect. And this is why Sarasvati says you are in control what you do, because this cycle brings you into the driver's seat, and then you're in control of what you're doing. And this is basically also a summary of what we've seen so far. Again, we've seen the approach. Everybody can be an entrepreneur. It's easy to have ideas. You can differentiate them from opportunity, but then if you have found this opportunity, online style consultant, you have to learn whether the market wants that or not. And this is about getting yourself started, taking a team with you, and starting lean. And starting lean doesn't mean you need a lot of money. It's low amounts, it's a comparable low affordable loss, and then you can start successful in the best possible way, like successful entrepreneurs would do that. Now, we're getting to our last chapter, which is watching out for the critical obstacles of a new venture, because in every step of this process, there are always obstacles you have to look at, and this is what we're doing next.